I don't want toys for Christmas. I want a daddy for mommy, the little girl told the mall Santa, who was actually a CEO. The red velvet suit felt heavier than any business suit Marcus Harrison had ever worn. Sitting in the golden throne at Maplewood Mall's Christmas Wonderland, surrounded by twinkling lights and fake snow, the billionaire CEO of Harrison Enterprises wondered what the hell he was doing. The polyester beard itched against his jaw, and the padding around his stomach made him feel like a fraud, which, technically, he was. Ho, 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 he practiced under his breath, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. 3 weeks ago, his assistant had mentioned the mall's Santa had quit unexpectedly. Marcus had volunteered on impulse, driven by a desperate need to do something, anything, that wasn't about profit margins or board meetings. His therapist had suggested meaningful activities to combat the emptiness that had been eating at him since his divorce finalized 6 months ago. The mall buzzed with pre-Christmas chaos. Mothers dragged screaming toddlers past storefront displays while teenagers gathered around the food court, their laughter echoing off the vaulted ceiling. The scent of cinnamon pretzels mixed with pine-scented air freshener, creating an artificial holiday atmosphere that somehow felt more real than the sterile penthouse Marcus called home. "Next!" called Jenny, the cheerful elf volunteer who managed the line. Marcus adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses beneath the Santa hat and prepared his best jolly voice. A woman approached with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. Marcus's breath caught. The woman was beautiful, but it was the kind of beauty that came from exhaustion and worry. Dark circles under hazel eyes, honey-blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, genes that had seen better days. Her daughter, however, was pure sunshine. Bright blue eyes sparkled with excitement above rosy cheeks, her dark curls bouncing as she practically vibrated with anticipation. "Come on, sweetheart," the woman said softly, her voice carrying a slight southern accent. "Tell Santa what you want for Christmas." The little girl approached the throne with the fearless confidence only children possessed. She climbed onto Marcus's lap without hesitation, her small hands gripping his red coat as she settled in. This close, he could smell her strawberry shampoo and see the gap where she'd lost a tooth. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, surprised by how natural the gentle tone felt. "Emma Grace," she announced proudly. "I'm 5 3/4. "Well, Emma Grace, have you been good this year?" "Mostly," she said with the brutal honesty of childhood. "I did put gum in Tommy Peterson's hair, but he was being mean to my friend Sophie." Marcus bit back a smile. "I see. And what would you like Santa to bring you for Christmas?" Emma Grace's expression grew serious. She glanced back at her mother, who was watching from a few feet away, with an encouraging smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The little girl leaned closer to Marcus's ear, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't want toys for Christmas," she said quietly. "I want a daddy for mommy." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His chest tightened as Emma Grace pulled back to look at him with those impossibly blue eyes, so full of hope and innocence. "She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping," Emma Grace continued in her stage whisper. "And she works real hard at the diner, but she's always tired. I think if she had a daddy, if I had a daddy, then maybe she wouldn't be so sad." Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. This wasn't what he'd expected when he'd put on the red suit. He'd thought he'd be dealing with requests for video games and dolls, not the desperate wish of a child who wanted to heal her mother's loneliness. "That's a very special wish, Emma Grace," he managed, his voice slightly rough, despite the jolly tone he was trying to maintain. "Sometimes the best Christmas gifts aren't things we can wrap up in pretty paper." "I know," she said solemnly, "but maybe Santa magic is different." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the photography station. Another mother was arguing loudly with one of the teenage workers about photo packages, her voice carrying across the small winter wonderland. "This is ridiculous," the woman snapped. $40 for 3 pictures? What kind of scam are you running here?" Emma Grace's mother stepped forward, her hand touching the angry woman's arm gently. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I work here part-time in the evenings. I might be able to help." Marcus watched, fascinated, as Emma Grace's mother diffused the situation with quiet competence. She spoke in low, soothing tones, explaining package options, and somehow managing to find a solution that left the angry customer satisfied. It was a masterclass in customer service, delivered with genuine warmth and patience. "Your mommy is very kind," Marcus told Emma Grace, who had been watching the interaction with obvious pride. "She's the best mommy in the whole world," Emma Grace said firmly. "She reads me stories every night even when she's super tired, and she makes the best chocolate chip pancakes. And when I have bad dreams, she lets me sleep in her bed. She sounds wonderful." "She is. That's why she deserves a good daddy, one who won't yell or leave like my first daddy did." The casual way Emma Grace mentioned her father's abandonment made Marcus's hands clench into fists. What kind of man walked away from this bright, beautiful child and her obviously devoted mother? "Emma Grace, honey, Santa has other children waiting," her mother called gently, having resolved the earlier conflict. "Okay, Mommy." Emma Grace turned back to Marcus. "Will you remember what I asked for?" "I promise I won't forget," Marcus said solemnly. Emma Grace beamed and gave him an unexpected hug before sliding down from his lap. As she skipped back to her mother, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with stock prices or corporate acquisitions. "Thank you," Emma Grace's mother said as they approached. "I'm sorry if she said anything inappropriate. She's at that age where she says whatever pops into her head." "She was perfect," Marcus assured her, his voice slightly muffled by the fake beard. "Absolutely perfect." The woman smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her, and it transformed her entire face. "I'm Claire, by the way, Claire Patterson, and that little chatterbox is Emma Grace." "Nice to meet you both," Marcus said carefully, hyper-aware that he was supposed to be Santa, not himself. "We'll let you get back to the other children," Claire said, but she lingered for a moment. "Thank you for being so patient with her. She's been through a lot this year, and seeing her this excited about Christmas, it means everything." As they walked away, Marcus watched Claire's protective hand on Emma Grace's shoulder, the way the little girl chattered excitedly about meeting Santa, the tired slope of Claire's shoulders despite her smile. Something had shifted inside him during those few minutes, like a lock clicking open on a door he'd kept sealed for months. "Wonderful family, aren't they?" Jenny the elf said quietly, appearing beside his throne with a cup of hot chocolate. "Claire works here 3 nights a week, plus her day job at Rosie's Diner downtown. Single mom, doing everything she can to make ends meet." "What happened to Emma Grace's father?" Marcus found himself asking. Jenny's expression darkened slightly. "Left when Emma Grace was 2, just up and disappeared one day. Claire never talks about it, but you can tell it hurt her bad. She's been raising that little girl all on her own since then." Marcus nodded, filing away the information. The next few children blurred together, typical Christmas requests for bikes and video games and pet puppies. But his mind kept drifting back to Emma Grace's whispered wish and her mother's tired smile. When his shift ended 3 hours later, Marcus found himself lingering in the parking lot, watching as Claire and Emma Grace walked to a battered Honda Civic that had seen better days. The car took several tries to start, and he could see Claire's shoulders tense with each failed attempt. When it finally turned over, she sagged with relief before carefully backing out of the space. That night, in his penthouse apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline, Marcus sat by his floor-to-ceiling windows with a glass of wine he didn't want, thinking about strawberry shampoo and gap-tooth smiles. His lawyer had called earlier about finalizing some details of his divorce settlement. His ex-wife was getting the house in the Hamptons, which was fine since Marcus had never felt at home there anyway. He thought about Emma Grace's simple wish, a daddy for her mommy, and realized he couldn't remember the last time anyone had needed him for something that mattered. His employees needed him for paychecks and direction, his board needed him for profits and growth. But when was the last time someone had needed him just to be happy? The next evening, Marcus returned to the mall, and the evening after that. Playing Santa became the highlight of his days, a break from the corporate world that had defined his life for so long. He found himself looking forward to seeing familiar faces, remembering names, caring about these small moments in ways that surprised him. On his fourth night, Claire and Emma Grace returned. Santa! Emma Grace practically launched herself at his throne, her excitement infectious. I came back to visit. Well, hello again, Emma Grace, Marcus said warmly. How have you been? Good. Mommy let me help make cookies for her work friends, and I only dropped one batch. She giggled at the memory. They were still good, just a little flat. Claire approached more slowly, and Marcus noticed she looked even more tired than before. There were worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there a few days ago. I'm sorry, Claire said apologetically. She insisted on coming back to see you. I hope that's okay. I know you're probably busy with all the other children. I always have time for Emma Grace, Marcus assured her, and meant it. How are you doing, Claire? The question seemed to catch her off guard. I'm fine, she said automatically, then paused. Actually, it's been a tough week. The car needs repairs I can't afford, and my boss at the diner cut my hours because business is slow, but we're managing. Marcus felt a familiar surge of anger at life's unfairness. Here was a woman working 2 jobs, raising a beautiful daughter alone, and still struggling to make ends meet while he had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Mommy's trying not to worry, Emma Grace announced with the directness of childhood. But I heard her on the phone with Grandma. She was using her quiet, worried voice. Claire flushed. Emma Grace, honey, that's private conversation. It's okay, the little girl said matter-of-factly. Santa knows everything anyway, right, Santa? Marcus met Claire's embarrassed gaze over Emma Grace's head. Sometimes grown-ups have to handle difficult things, he said carefully. But that's what makes mothers so special. They find ways to take care of the people they love. Like superheroes, Emma Grace agreed, except Mommy doesn't wear a cape. The best superheroes don't always wear capes, Marcus said softly, still looking at Claire. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, an understanding. Claire's cheeks flushed pink, and she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was both nervous and endearing. We should let Santa get back to work, Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, Marcus found himself saying, my shift ends in about 20 minutes. There's a nice coffee shop just down from here. Would you like to grab some hot chocolate? Emma Grace looks like she could use some warm-up after being out in this cold. The invitation surprised all 3 of them. Claire blinked, clearly uncertain, while Emma Grace bounced on her toes with excitement. Can we, Mommy, please? I love hot chocolate. Claire hesitated, and Marcus could see the internal debate playing across her features. Trust versus caution, hope versus experience. I promise I'm not a creepy mall Santa, Marcus said with gentle humor, though he realized the irony of the statement given his actual situation. I'm just someone who enjoys your daughter's company, and yours too. Please, Mommy, Emma Grace pleaded, employing the devastating power of 5-year-old puppy dog eyes. Claire looked down at her daughter's hopeful face, then back at Marcus. Okay, she said finally. Hot chocolate sounds nice. 20 minutes later, Marcus had changed out of his Santa suit in the mall's family restroom, careful to stuff the costume into his gym bag. He'd kept the beard and hat, not ready to completely blow his cover, but needing to be more himself. Meeting Claire and Emma Grace at the coffee shop entrance, he felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since high school. You look different without all the padding, Claire observed with a small smile. The North Pole has an excellent gym, Marcus replied, earning a giggle from Emma Grace. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. They found a corner table, and Marcus ordered hot chocolate for Emma Grace, coffee for Claire, and a peppermint mocha for himself, something he never would have ordered in his normal life, but felt appropriate for the Santa persona he was still maintaining. "So," Claire said once they were settled, "do you do this every year, the Santa thing?" Marcus wrapped his hands around his warm mug, buying time. "This is actually my first year," he admitted. "I wanted to try something different for the holidays." "What do you do when you're not being Santa?" Claire asked. The question he'd been dreading. Marcus had prepared for this, but sitting across from Claire's open, curious face made lying feel wrong. "I work in business," he said carefully. "Corporate stuff. Pretty boring, actually." Emma Grace, who had been focused on marshmallows, suddenly looked up. "Do you have a family, Santa? I mean, when you're not Santa?" Another difficult question. "No," Marcus said quietly. "I don't have a family." "That's sad," Emma Grace said with characteristic directness. "Everyone should have a family." "Emma Grace," Claire warned gently. "It's okay," Marcus said. "She's right. Everyone should have people who care about them." "Well, you can be part of our family if you want," Emma Grace announced, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "We're small, but we're good at sharing." Claire's face reddened. "Emma Grace, you can't just adopt people." "Why not?" Emma Grace asked reasonably. "Jesus said to be nice to strangers, and Santa's not really a stranger anymore." Marcus felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. When was the last time someone had offered to include him in their family, even a 5-year-old someone? "That's very kind of you, Emma Grace," he managed. They spent the next hour talking about Emma Grace's school, Claire's work, harmless topics that felt incredibly meaningful. Marcus learned that Claire was 28, originally from Tennessee, had moved to Chicago for college, and stayed. She loved reading mystery novels, made a mean apple pie, and had been saving for 2 years to take Emma Grace to Disney World. Emma Grace, meanwhile, regaled Marcus with stories about her kindergarten class, her best friend Sophie, and her teacher Mrs. Rodriguez, who let her feed the class goldfish. She was bright, funny, and completely unself-conscious in the way only children could be. "Mommy," Emma Grace said as they prepared to leave, "can Santa come have dinner with us sometime?" Claire nearly choked on her last sip of coffee. "Sweetheart, I'm sure Santa is very busy." "I'd love to," Marcus heard himself saying, "if your mom thinks that would be okay." Claire looked trapped between her daughter's hopeful expression and her own caution. We don't really have much. I mean, I'm not a great cook or anything." "I bet you're better than you think," Marcus said gently. "And honestly, I can't remember the last time I had a home-cooked meal." "Really?" "Really?" Claire bit her lip, considering. "Saturday evening. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs." "Perfect." As they parted ways in the parking lot, Emma Grace hugged Marcus goodnight with the easy affection of childhood. Claire shook his hand, her touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said softly, "for tonight. Emma Grace hasn't been this happy in a long time." "Thank you for letting me join you," Marcus replied. "I haven't been this happy in a long time either." Driving home in his Aston Martin, Marcus realized he'd just agreed to have dinner with a woman who thought he was a part-time Santa with a boring corporate job. The deception sat heavily on his chest, but the alternative, revealing who he really was, felt impossible. Women had pursued him for his money before. The last thing he wanted was for Claire to see him differently because of his wealth. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Claire's apartment was in a modest complex on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where working families lived paycheck to paycheck. Marcus parked his Aston Martin a block away and walked, carrying flowers he'd bought from a grocery store rather than the expensive florist he usually patronized. Emma Grace answered the door in a princess dress, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Santa, you came." "I promised I would," Marcus said, handing her a small gift bag. Inside was a simple children's book about friendship, nothing expensive or flashy. "A book?" Emma Grace exclaimed with genuine delight. "Mommy, look! Santa brought me a book." Claire appeared from the kitchen wearing a simple blue sweater that brought out her eyes and jeans that fit her perfectly. She'd put her hair up in a ponytail again, but a few strands had escaped to frame her face. She looked beautiful and completely unaware of it. "You didn't have to bring anything," she said, accepting the flowers with a pleased smile. "My mother always taught me never to show up empty-handed," Marcus replied, which was true, though he suspected his mother had been thinking of dinner parties in Manhattan penthouses rather than spaghetti dinners in Chicago apartments. The apartment was small but immaculately clean, filled with second-hand furniture that had been arranged with care and creativity. Family photos covered one wall. Claire and Emma Grace at various ages, an older couple Marcus assumed were Claire's parents, birthday parties and Christmas mornings captured in glossy prints. It felt more like home than anywhere Marcus had lived in years. "Something smells incredible," he said, and meant it. The rich scents of garlic and herbs filled the small space. "It's just sauce from a jar," Claire said apologetically. "Nothing special. It smells special to me." Dinner was a revelation. The spaghetti was perfectly cooked, the meatballs tender and flavorful, the garlic bread crispy and buttery, but more than the food, it was the atmosphere that enchanted Marcus. Emma Grace chattered about her day. Claire listened with genuine interest to his carefully edited stories about corporate work, and for 2 hours Marcus forgot about board meetings and profit margins and the empty penthouse waiting for him. "Tell us about the North Pole," Emma Grace demanded, over chocolate chip ice cream for dessert. Marcus, who had been dreading this topic, found himself spinning an elaborate tale about reindeer games and elf workshops, making up details as he went. Emma Grace hung on every word, occasionally adding her own suggestions about how things worked in Santa's workshop. "And Mrs. Claus?" Emma Grace asked. "Is she nice?" "There is no Mrs. Claus," Marcus said quietly, the improvised story suddenly feeling too real. "Santa lives alone." "That's so sad," Emma Grace said, with 5-year-old empathy. "He takes care of everyone else, but nobody takes care of him." Claire reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind Emma Grace's ear. "Maybe that's why Santa likes visiting families like ours," she said softly, "so he can remember what it feels like to have people care about him." The words hit Marcus harder than they should have. He had to clear his throat before responding. "Maybe you're right." After dinner, they watched a Christmas movie on Claire's small television while Emma Grace fell asleep, curled against Marcus's side. He found himself stroking her dark curls absently, marveling at how natural it felt to have this small person trust him so completely. "She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast," Claire said quietly as they watched Emma Grace sleep. "She's been cautious since her father left." "What happened?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he had the right to know. Claire was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "He said he wasn't ready for the responsibility, that he'd made a mistake." She paused, her hands clenched in her lap. Emma Grace heard him say it. She was only 2, but she understood enough to know her daddy didn't want her. Marcus felt rage build in his chest. Not the controlled anger he used in boardrooms, but something primal and protective. He was an idiot. She keeps asking when he's coming back. It's been 3 years and she still asks. Claire's voice cracked slightly. "That's why she asked Santa for a daddy for me. She thinks if I had someone who loved me, then maybe she'd have someone who loved her too." "She already has someone who loves her," Marcus said fiercely. "She has you." "I know, and I love her more than anything in the world. But sometimes I wonder if I'm enough." Claire wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry. I don't usually dump my problems on virtual strangers." "I don't feel like a stranger," Marcus said honestly. Claire looked at him then, really looked at him, and Marcus felt something shift between them. The air seemed charged with possibility, with the kind of connection he'd never experienced before. "I should probably get her to bed," Claire said softly, but she didn't move. "Probably," Marcus agreed, but he didn't move either. They sat there in the glow of the television, with Emma Grace sleeping peacefully between them. and Marcus realized he'd never felt more at home in his life. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that Marcus treasured. He continued playing Santa at the mall, but now he had something to look forward to beyond the red suit and fake beard. Claire would stop by after her shifts at the diner, sometimes with Emma Grace, sometimes alone. They'd grab coffee, talk about their days, share stories about their pasts, carefully edited on Marcus's part, but genuine nonetheless. He learned that Claire read voraciously, devouring mystery novels in whatever spare time she could find. She loved old movies, especially the black and white ones from the 1940s. She sang along with the radio when she thought no one was listening, and she made the best chocolate chip cookies he'd ever tasted. Claire learned that Santa was funny and kind, that he remembered details about her day and asked follow-up questions about things she'd mentioned weeks earlier. He listened when she talked about Emma Grace's school projects and her worries about making ends meet. He never offered solutions or tried to fix her problems. He just listened, and somehow that meant everything. Emma Grace, meanwhile, had appointed herself as their unofficial matchmaker. "Santa, do you think my mommy is pretty?" she asked one evening as they shared a pretzel at the food court. "I think your mommy is beautiful," Marcus answered honestly. "Do you want to marry her?" "Emma Grace," Claire sputtered, her face turning bright red. "It's okay," Marcus said gently. "It's a fair question." He looked directly at Claire as he answered. "I think any man would be lucky to marry your mommy." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings and growing attraction. Claire looked away first, but not before Marcus saw the answering interest in her eyes. December 20th arrived with a heavy snowfall that transformed the mall into something truly magical. Marcus was in his element as Santa, watching children's faces light up as they shared their Christmas wishes. But underneath the joy, anxiety was building. Christmas was only 5 days away, and after that, what excuse would he have to keep seeing Claire and Emma Grace? His double life was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. His assistant had started asking questions about his evening disappearances, and his mother had called twice, wondering why he wasn't attending the usual round of holiday charity galas. The Harrison family had obligations, appearances to maintain, and playing Santa at a mall wasn't exactly keeping with their social standing. But every time he considered confessing the truth to Claire, he remembered the easy way she laughed at his jokes, the comfortable silences they shared, the way she looked at him like he was someone worth knowing. Not because of his bank account or his family name, but because of who he was when he forgot to be Marcus Harrison, billionaire CEO. That evening, as he was changing out of his Santa suit, Jenny the elf approached him with a concerned expression. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Marcus nodded, stuffing the red coat into his bag. "It's about Claire," Jenny said quietly. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but she's my friend, and I care about her." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What about her?" "She's falling for you. Hard." Jenny's expression was serious. "I've known Claire for 2 years, and I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. But here's the thing. She's been hurt before. Really badly. If you're not serious about this, if you're just having fun playing Santa and seeing what happens, you need to back off now before you break her heart." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I would never hurt her. Maybe not intentionally. But she doesn't know anything about your real life, does she? She thinks you're some guy who works in corporate and volunteers as Santa for fun. What happens when Christmas is over and you go back to your regular life? What happens when she finds out you've been lying to her?" Marcus opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Jenny was right, and they both knew it. "She's talking about introducing you to her parents when they visit for Christmas," Jenny continued. "She's planning to cook you Christmas dinner. Emma Grace is already calling you her almost daddy to her friends at school. This isn't casual for them." "It's not casual for me either," Marcus said quietly. "Then tell her the truth, all of it. Give her the chance to decide if she can handle who you really are before this goes any further." That night, Marcus sat in his penthouse office, staring out at the Chicago skyline, while Jenny's words echoed in his head. On his desk sat a background check he'd commissioned on Claire, something he'd done automatically, a habit from years of protecting himself from people who might want to exploit his wealth. The report confirmed everything he already knew. She was exactly who she appeared to be. No criminal record, no hidden agenda, no red flags. Just a young woman working 2 jobs to support her daughter, struggling to build a life from the pieces left by someone else's betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on him. Claire was genuine while he was the one living a lie. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Emma Grace wants to know if you'll come see her Christmas play tomorrow. It's at 2 p.m. at Jefferson Elementary. No pressure if you can't make it." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. He had a board meeting at 2 p.m. tomorrow, one he'd scheduled weeks ago to discuss the quarterly projections. Missing it would raise questions, require explanations he wasn't ready to give. But Emma Grace wanted him there. He typed back, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The next morning, Marcus Harrison, CEO of Harrison Enterprises, sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor and did something he'd never done in 15 years of running the company. He cancelled a board meeting. "Reschedule it for Monday," he told his assistant Sarah, who looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "Sir, the board members are flying in from New York specifically for this meeting. Then they can enjoy a weekend in Chicago. Reschedule it." "May I ask why?" Marcus looked out his window toward the direction of Jefferson Elementary, where in a few hours a 5-year-old girl would be performing in a Christmas play and looking for his face in the audience. "I have something more important to do." Jefferson Elementary was a world away from the private schools Marcus had attended as a child. The hallways were decorated with construction paper snowflakes and hand-drawn Christmas trees. The auditorium was filled with folding chairs and proud parents holding phones to record every moment of their children's performances. Marcus found Claire in the 3rd row, saving a seat beside her. She was wearing a green dress he'd never seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders, and when she smiled at him, his heart did something complicated in his chest. "You came," she said, and the relief in her voice told him how much she'd worried he wouldn't. "I promised I would." The play was a traditional nativity story with kindergarten-level execution and maximum charm. Emma Grace appeared as an angel, her costume slightly crooked, but her delivery letter perfect. When she spotted Marcus in the audience, her face lit up with such joy that several other parents turned to see who had earned that kind of excitement. "That's my almost daddy." Marcus heard her whisper loudly to the angel beside her, and his throat tightened with emotion. After the play, they went for ice cream at a small shop near the school. Emma Grace, still wearing her angel costume, chattered excitedly about the performance while Claire watched Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Thank you for coming," she said, when Emma Grace went to the bathroom. "I know you probably had to leave work early." "It was worth it," Marcus said honestly. "I wouldn't have missed seeing her up there for anything." Claire reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. She's never had a man show up for her before. Her father never came to anything, not even her birthday parties. Marcus turned his hand palm up, catching her fingers before she could pull away. "His loss." "Marcus," Claire said softly, using his name for the first time. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." His heart stopped. This was it. Somehow she'd figured out who he really was, and now came the moment of truth. "Okay," he said carefully. "Are you married, or seeing someone else? Because if you are, I need to know. Emma Grace is getting attached, and I can't let her be disappointed again." Relief flooded through him so quickly he felt dizzy. "No," he said firmly. "No wife, no girlfriend, no one. I promise you, Claire, there's no one else." She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because I'm falling for you, and that scares me to death." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "It scares me too," he confessed, "but I'm falling for you too. For both of you. When Emma Grace returned from the bathroom, she found them holding hands across the table and announced with 5-year-old satisfaction, "I knew it!" That evening, after they'd dropped Emma Grace at Claire's neighbor's apartment for a sleepover, Marcus found himself alone with Claire for the first time. They walked through downtown Chicago, looking at Christmas decorations and window displays, their breath visible in the cold air. "Tell me something about yourself that you've never told anyone," Claire said, as they stopped in front of a particularly elaborate department store window. Marcus considered the request. He could tell her about his childhood, about growing up wealthy but lonely, about parents who showed love through trust funds and boarding school tuition. He could tell her about his ex-wife, who'd married him for his money and left him for someone richer. He could tell her about the emptiness he'd been living with for months, the sense that nothing he did mattered to anyone. Instead, he said, "I've never felt like I belonged anywhere until I met you and Emma Grace." Claire looked up at him, her eyes bright in the reflection of the Christmas lights. "I know exactly what you mean." They kissed for the first time, standing on a Chicago sidewalk, with snow beginning to fall around them. It was gentle and tentative and perfect, and Marcus knew with absolute certainty that he was in love with this woman who thought he was a part-time Santa with a boring corporate job. The deception had never felt heavier. December 23rd brought disaster in the form of a photograph. Marcus was at the mall, finishing what he'd decided would be his last shift as Santa. Christmas was 2 days away, and after that, he'd have to figure out how to maintain his relationship with Claire and Emma Grace without the Santa costume as cover. He was planning to tell Claire the truth on Christmas Day, give her his real identity as a Christmas gift, and hope she could forgive the deception. He'd just finished with a particularly enthusiastic 4-year-old when his phone buzzed with an urgent text from Sarah. "Sir, you need to see the Chicago Tribune website immediately." With growing dread, Marcus stepped away from the Santa throne and opened the website on his phone. The headline made his blood run cold. Harrison Enterprises CEO plays Santa at local mall. Below the headline was a clear photograph of him in the Santa suit, taken with a telephoto lens from somewhere in the mall. The article was short but damaging. Billionaire Marcus Harrison, recently divorced CEO of Harrison Enterprises, has been moonlighting as a mall Santa at Maplewood Mall. Sources close to the Harrison family express concern about the CEO's recent erratic behavior, including missing important board meetings and avoiding social obligations. Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. The photograph was unmistakable. Anyone who knew him would recognize his face despite the fake beard. And if the photo was already online, it would be everywhere by morning. Claire was coming to see him tonight. She was bringing Emma Grace for one last Santa visit before Christmas, and they were planning to go to dinner afterward. How could he explain this? How could he tell her that everything she thought she knew about him was a lie? His phone rang. Sarah calling with damage control strategies. He declined the call. Then it rang again. His mother, probably apoplectic about the family name being associated with such common work. He declined that call too. But he couldn't decline the reality of what was happening. By tomorrow, everyone would know that the man Claire thought was a humble corporate worker was actually Marcus Harrison, one of Chicago's wealthiest bachelors. "Santa." Jenny appeared beside him, looking concerned. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus showed her the article without a word. Jenny's face paled as she read. "Oh no," she whispered. "Claire doesn't know, does she?" "No." Marcus's voice was hollow. "She's going to find out from a newspaper article that I've been lying to her for weeks. You have to tell her first, before she sees this online or on the news." Marcus nodded numbly. "She's coming here in an hour. Then you have an hour to figure out what you're going to say." But when Claire and Emma Grace arrived at the mall that evening, Marcus could tell from Claire's expression that he was too late. She looked stricken, her face pale, and her eyes wounded. Emma Grace, oblivious to the tension, ran toward the Santa throne with her usual enthusiasm. "Santa, Santa, we came to see you!" Emma Grace launched herself at Marcus, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Mommy said this might be our last visit before Christmas." Marcus hugged her tightly, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent and trying to memorize the feeling of her trust. Over Emma Grace's head, he met Claire's eyes and saw the betrayal there. "Emma Grace," Claire said quietly, "why don't you tell Santa about the Christmas cookies we made today while I take a phone call?" Emma Grace launched into an elaborate description of their baking adventures, complete with details about flour explosions and chocolate chip taste testing. Marcus listened and responded automatically, but his attention was on Claire, who had stepped away to the edge of the Christmas display area. When Emma Grace finished her story, she looked at him with those impossibly blue eyes and asked, "Santa, are you sad about something? You look different." "I'm just thinking about some grown-up things," Marcus said gently. "Mommy does that too. She gets worry wrinkles between her eyes." Emma Grace traced a finger between Marcus's eyebrows. "Like that. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Marcus said carefully. "And then they have to figure out how to fix them. Mommy says saying sorry helps. And chocolate chip cookies." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "Your mommy is very wise. I know. That's why I asked that's why I asked you to take care of her." Emma Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. "But you're Santa, so you already knew that." The simple trust in her voice nearly broke Marcus's heart. "Emma Grace, sweetheart, what if I told you that sometimes even Santa isn't who he seems to be?" Emma Grace considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. "Are you really an elf?" "No, I'm not an elf." "Are you really Mrs. Claus in disguise?" Marcus couldn't help but smile. "No, I'm not Mrs. Claus." "Then you're just a regular person who wanted to make kids happy for Christmas." The simplicity of her understanding floored him. "Yes, I'm just a regular person who wanted to make kids happy." "That's even better," Emma Grace announced, "because that means you chose to be nice. Santa has to be nice because it's his job, but you just wanted to be." Before Marcus could respond, Claire returned, her phone clutched in her hand and tears in her eyes. "Emma Grace, sweetie, we need to go now," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "But we just got here." "I know, baby, but something came up. Say goodbye to Marcus." The use of his real name hit like a physical blow. Emma Grace looked confused, but obediently hugged Marcus goodbye. "Will I see you for Christmas dinner?" she asked innocently. Marcus looked at Claire, whose expression was answer enough. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said honestly. "But you promised. Sometimes grown-ups have to break promises even when they don't want to." Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. "But that doesn't mean the promise wasn't real when they made it." Emma Grace's face crumpled with confusion and hurt. Claire scooped her up, her own tears finally spilling over. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." As they walked away, Marcus heard Emma Grace ask plaintively, "Mommy, why are you crying? Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes things just don't work out the way we hope they will." Marcus sat on the Santa throne long after they'd gone, even after the mall had closed and Jenny had finished cleaning up the display area. When security finally asked him to leave, he changed out of the Santa suit for the last time and drove home to his empty penthouse. His phone had been buzzing constantly. Reporters wanting comments, board members demanding explanations, friends expressing concern or amusement. He ignored them all. At home, he poured himself a drink he didn't want and stood at his windows looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, Claire was putting Emma Grace to bed, probably trying to explain why the man they'd both cared about had been lying to them all along. His laptop chimed with an email notification. Against his better judgment, he opened it. "Mr. Harrison," the message began formally, and Marcus recognized Claire's email address from the times she'd sent him funny pictures of Emma Grace. "I'm writing because I don't trust myself to say this in person without getting emotional. and Emma Grace doesn't need to see me fall apart more than she already has. I don't know who you really are, or why you did what you did. Maybe it was some kind of game to you, or maybe you were bored and thought it would be amusing to see how long you could fool the poor single mother. I don't really care anymore. What I care about is my daughter. She's been asking me all evening why you lied to us, and I don't have a good answer for her. She trusted you completely, and now she's questioning whether anyone can be trusted. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your 5-year-old lose faith in the goodness of people? I knew I was falling for you. I was scared of it, but I was ready to take that risk because I thought you were someone worth trusting. I thought you were kind and genuine and different from every other man who's disappointed me. I was obviously wrong. Please don't contact us again. Emma Grace will get over this eventually, and so will I. We did just fine before you came into our lives, and we'll do just fine after you're gone. Claire. Marcus read the email 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. He started to type a response 12 times, trying to explain, to apologize, to make her understand that everything he'd felt was real, even if his identity wasn't. But every attempt sounded hollow, selfish, inadequate. Finally, he closed the laptop without responding. Christmas Eve dawned grey and cold, matching Marcus's mood perfectly. He'd slept maybe 2 hours, spending most of the night staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment with Claire and Emma Grace, wondering where he could have done things differently. His mother called at 7 a.m. "Marcus, darling, what on earth is this nonsense about you playing Santa at some mall?" Victoria Harrison's voice carried the particular brand of disapproval she reserved for her son's most egregious social missteps. "Good morning, Mother. Don't good morning me. The phone has been ringing all night with reporters wanting statements. Harrison family charity work is one thing, but this is beneath us." "Is it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Of course it is. What were you thinking? And cancelling board meetings to attend elementary school plays? Marcus, you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, not some unemployed actor looking for holiday work. Maybe I wanted to do something that actually mattered for once. Everything you do matters. You employ thousands of people. You make decisions that affect the economy. You carry on the Harrison legacy." "I sat in a chair in a red suit and made children smile," Marcus interrupted. "And for the first time in years, I felt like my life had a purpose." There was silence on the other end of the line. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer but still concerned. "Marcus, I know the divorce was difficult, but this isn't the way to handle it. Why don't you come to the house for Christmas dinner? Invite someone appropriate. Jennifer Morrison's daughter is recently divorced. Very suitable." "I'm not coming to dinner, Mother." "Then what are you going to do? Sit in that sterile apartment, feeling sorry for yourself?" Marcus looked around his penthouse, marble floors, designer furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing $1 million view. Victoria was right. It was sterile. It was also empty of everything that had made the past few weeks meaningful. "I don't know," he admitted. After hanging up with his mother, Marcus wandered through his apartment like a ghost. He tried to work, but the quarterly reports that usually demanded his complete attention felt meaningless. He tried to eat, but food tasted like cardboard. He tried to read, but the words blurred together on the page. By afternoon, he found himself driving aimlessly through Chicago's streets. Without conscious direction, he ended up in Claire's neighborhood, parked across from her apartment complex. He wasn't stalking. He had no intention of approaching her door. He just needed to be near the place where he'd been happiest. Through her living room window, he could see a small Christmas tree twinkling with lights. Occasionally, Emma Grace's silhouette passed by the window, and once he caught a glimpse of Claire moving through the kitchen. They were going on with their lives, as Claire had said they would. As evening fell, Marcus made a decision. He drove to the nearest 24-hour store and bought supplies, wrapping paper, ribbons, gift bags, and a few other things. Then he returned to his apartment and got to work. It took him most of the night, but by Christmas morning, he had assembled something that felt like the only appropriate response to Claire's email. An apology that wasn't just words. At dawn on Christmas Day, Marcus Harrison, still wearing yesterday's clothes and operating on no sleep, loaded his car with carefully wrapped packages and drove to Claire's apartment complex. He didn't knock on her door or try to see them. Instead, he quietly placed everything on their doorstep, left a single envelope addressed to Claire, and drove away. Inside the envelope was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a simple note, "Claire, this won't fix what I broke, and it's not meant to buy your forgiveness. It's meant to give Emma Grace the Disney World trip you've been saving for, to fix your car, to help with whatever you need. You were right that I lied about who I am, but I never lied about how I feel about you and Emma Grace. You're both extraordinary, and I'm sorry I wasn't worthy of the trust you gave me. I hope someday Emma Grace will understand that even though I wasn't really Santa, my love for both of you was real." Marcus. Marcus spent Christmas Day alone in his penthouse, but for the first time in months, he felt something approaching peace. He'd done the only thing he could think of to show Claire and Emma Grace that his feelings had been genuine, even if his identity hadn't been. He was surprised when his doorman called that evening to announce a visitor. "There's a Ms. Patterson here to see you, sir. Should I send her up?" Marcus's heart stopped. "Yes, send her up." 5 minutes later, Claire stood in his penthouse doorway, looking small and uncertain in the vast marble entryway. She was holding the envelope he'd left on her doorstep, and her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "You can't do this," she said, without preamble. "Claire, you can't lie to me for weeks, break my daughter's heart, disappear from our lives, and then try to fix everything with money." Her voice was shaking with emotion. "That's not how this works." "I know," Marcus said quietly. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I wanted you to have something good come out of this mess." "You want to give me something good?" Claire stepped into the apartment, and Marcus could see her taking in the luxury that surrounded them. The marble floors, the designer furniture, the artwork that cost more than she made in a year. "Tell me why." "Why what?" "Why you did it. Why you pretended to be someone else. Why you made my daughter fall in love with you when you knew it couldn't last." Marcus closed the door behind her and led her to the living room, though she remained standing, holding herself rigidly upright. "I was lonely," he said simply. "I know that sounds pathetic coming from someone with all this." He gestured at the opulent surroundings. "But I was drowning in loneliness. My marriage ended because my wife was only interested in my money. My friends are interested in what I can do for them. My family sees me as a symbol of the Harrison legacy, not as a person. So you thought you'd slum it with the poor people for a while? See how the other half lives?" "No." Marcus's voice was fierce. "It wasn't like that. I volunteered to be Santa on impulse, thinking maybe I could do something meaningful for once. And then Emma Grace climbed on my lap and told me she wanted a daddy for her mommy, and I—" He trailed off, struggling to find words for what had happened to him in that moment. "You what?" Claire demanded. "I fell in love. Not just with you, though God knows I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. I fell in love with both of you, with the life you'd built, with the way Emma Grace looked at me like I was a hero just for showing up. I fell in love with feeling needed for something that mattered." Claire was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting the envelope. "She's been crying since yesterday," she said finally. "She keeps asking if Santa doesn't love her anymore because she was bad somehow." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. "I never wanted to hurt her. I never wanted to hurt either of you. But you did, because you were too much of a coward to tell us the truth." "You're right. I was a coward. I was terrified that if you knew who I really was, you'd see me the way everyone else does, as a bank account with a person attached. I was terrified that what we had would disappear. So instead, you made sure it would disappear by lying to us." Marcus nodded miserably. I know I handled this all wrong. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please believe me when I say that everything I felt for you and Emma Grace was real. When I was with you, I wasn't Marcus Harrison, billionaire CEO. I was just me, the person I'd forgotten I could be. Claire walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the view for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful rather than angry. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not that you're rich. It's not even that you lied about your name or your job. The worst part is that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Claire, I'm not some gold digger, Marcus. I'm not going to throw myself at you because you have money. If anything, your wealth makes this harder, not easier. What do you mean? She turned back to face him, and Marcus could see the exhaustion in her face, the toll this had taken on her. I mean that I'm a single mother working 2 jobs to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. You live in a penthouse that probably costs more than I'll make in my lifetime. What kind of future could we possibly have? How could I ever be sure you weren't just keeping me around as some kind of charity case? Because I love you, Marcus said desperately. Not because I feel sorry for you, not because I want to rescue you, but because you're the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. Because you make me want to be a better man. Love isn't enough, Claire said sadly. Love doesn't bridge the gap between your world and mine. Then I'll leave my world. The words surprised both of them. Claire stared at him, and Marcus realized he meant it. I'll give it all up, he continued, the idea gaining momentum as he spoke. The company, the money, all of it. I'll find a regular job, get a regular apartment. We can build something real together. You can't do that. Why not? Because that's not who you are. You're Marcus Harrison. You run a Fortune 500 company. You employ thousands of people. You can't just walk away from that because you want to play house with me and Emma Grace. Watch me. Claire shook her head. Even if you did, how would I ever know if you resented me for it? How would I know you wouldn't wake up one day missing your old life and blaming me for taking it away? Marcus felt desperation rising in his chest. Then what do you want me to do? Tell me what it would take for you to forgive me, to give us another chance. I don't know, Claire whispered, and for the first time since she'd arrived, her composure cracked. I don't know if there is anything. You made my daughter believe in magic again, and then you took it away. You made me believe I could trust someone again, and then you showed me I was wrong. How do I get past that? Tears were streaming down her face now, and Marcus wanted nothing more than to hold her, to comfort her. But he knew he'd lost that right. I'm sorry, he said helplessly. I'm so sorry. Claire wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. I should go. Emma Grace is at my neighbor's, and she's probably wondering where I am. She walked toward the door, then paused. Marcus, the money. I can't accept it. Please, it's not for you. It's for Emma Grace. Let me give her the Christmas I promised. Claire was quiet for a long moment. She asked me this morning if Santa was real. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her that Santa is the part of people that wants to make others happy. Tell her that as long as there are people willing to be kind to each other, Santa will always be real. Claire looked back at him with something that might have been the ghost of a smile. That's a good answer. I learned it from a very wise 5-year-old. After Claire left, Marcus sat in his empty penthouse and thought about what she'd said. She was right. Love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. But maybe there was another way. Over the next week, Marcus made a series of phone calls that would have shocked his mother and mystified his board of directors. He called lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors. He made arrangements that would have seemed impossible a month ago, but now felt like the only logical choice. On New Year's Eve, as Chicago celebrated around him, Marcus Harrison finalized the documents that would change his life forever. The next morning, January 1st, he drove to Claire's apartment complex and knocked on her door. Emma Grace answered, her face lighting up before confusion took over. Santa? But Christmas is over. I'm not Santa anymore, Marcus said gently. I'm just Marcus. but I was hoping I could talk to you and your mommy for a few minutes." Claire appeared behind Emma Grace, her expression wary but not hostile. "Marcus, I wasn't expecting to see you." "I know. I have something I need to tell you both. Something important." Claire hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. The apartment looked the same. Cozy, lived in, filled with love despite its modest furnishings. But something was different. Marcus noticed new art supplies scattered on the coffee table and what looked like vacation brochures stacked neatly on the kitchen counter. "We're going to Disney World," Emma Grace announced, following his gaze. "Mommy said we could use Santa's money to go." "That's wonderful," Marcus said sincerely. "When are you leaving?" "Next month," Claire said quietly. "Emma Grace has been planning our whole trip." "I'm going to meet Elsa," Emma Grace said seriously, "and ride Space Mountain if I'm brave enough." "I think you're brave enough for anything," Marcus told her. Emma Grace beamed, then her expression grew more serious. "Are you still sad about the grown-up things?" "A little," Marcus admitted, "but I'm trying to fix them." "Did you say sorry?" "I tried to, but sometimes sorry isn't enough." Emma Grace considered this with 5-year-old wisdom. "Mommy says sometimes you have to show sorry, not just say it. Your mommy is very smart. That's actually why I'm here." Marcus looked at Claire. "I want to show you both how sorry I am." Claire crossed her arms, her body language defensive. "Marcus, if this is about money again..." "It's not about money." "Well, not exactly." Marcus pulled out a folder of documents he'd been carrying. "I've done something, and I want you to understand what it means." He handed Claire the folder. She opened it cautiously, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of the legal language. "I don't understand. What is this?" "It's the paperwork for the Harrison Foundation," Marcus explained. "I've donated 90% of my wealth to establish a foundation focused on supporting single parents and their children. Job training, childcare assistance, educational scholarships, emergency financial aid. All the things you've told me parents in your situation need." Claire stared at the documents, her face pale. "You did what?" "I kept enough to live comfortably but simply. No more penthouse, no more Aston Martin. I've bought a modest house about 10 minutes from here, and I've taken a job as a program coordinator for the foundation, helping other families like yours. Families who need support, but not charity." "Marcus, you can't. This is insane. You can't give away your fortune because of me." "I didn't do it because of you," Marcus said gently. "I did it because of me, because you were right. I needed to figure out who I really wanted to be. And the person I want to be is someone who uses his resources to make a real difference, not someone who hoards wealth while children go without Christmas presents because their mothers can't afford them." Emma Grace had been listening to this conversation with the intensity children reserved for important adult discussions. Now she spoke up. "Does this mean you're not rich anymore?" "I'm not as rich in money," Marcus told her, "but I'm hoping to be richer in other ways." "Like friendship?" "Exactly like friendship." Emma Grace looked at her mother, then back at Marcus. "Are you going to be our friend now?" Marcus's heart clenched. "I'd like to be, if your mommy says it's okay." All eyes turned to Claire, who was still staring at the foundation documents with an expression of disbelief. "You really did this," she said finally. "I really did. But your company is being run by a very capable board of directors. I'll still be involved, but not as CEO. I've discovered I'm much better at helping people than I am at making money." Claire looked up at him, and Marcus saw something shifting in her expression. Surprise giving way to understanding, guardedness softening into possibility. "This doesn't fix everything," she said quietly. "I know. I'm still hurt. Emma Grace is still confused about what happened. I know that too. And I'm still scared of trusting you again." Marcus nodded. "I understand. I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm asking for the chance to earn your trust back, both of yours." Emma Grace, who had been following this conversation with the seriousness of a diplomat, suddenly broke into a grin. "Mommy, can we keep him?" Despite everything, Claire laughed. The first genuine laugh Marcus had heard from her since the truth came out. "It's not that simple, baby." But he said, "Sorry with actions," Emma Grace pointed out with 5-year-old logic. "And he wants to help other mummies and kids. That's like being Santa all year round." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "That's exactly what it's like." Claire looked between her daughter and Marcus could see her weighing hope against fear, possibility against past hurt. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we do it right. No more lies, no more pretending to be someone you're not. I need to know the real you, all of you." "Deal," Marcus said immediately. "And we go slow. Emma Grace has been through enough upheaval. Any relationship we might have comes second to her well-being. Of course. And I pay for dinner sometimes. I work, I contribute. I'm not some charity case you're helping." Marcus smiled. "I wouldn't dream of treating you like anything other than an equal partner." Emma Grace clapped her hands together. "Does this mean Marcus can come to Disney World with us?" Claire and Marcus looked at each other, and Marcus saw the moment when hope won out over fear in her eyes. "Maybe," Claire said softly. "If he promises to wear the matching Mickey Mouse ears, I'm definitely going to buy him." "I promise," Marcus said solemnly, and meant it. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the kitchen of his new 3-bedroom house, making chocolate chip pancakes while Emma Grace helped by stealing chocolate chips from the bowl. Claire sat at the kitchen table, reviewing applications for the Foundation's newest program, a scholarship fund for children of single parents. "This one's good," she said, holding up an application. "Single mother of 3, working full-time while finishing her nursing degree. Her oldest wants to study engineering." "Approve it," Marcus said without hesitation. "You don't even know how much money it is." "Doesn't matter. If she's willing to work that hard for her family, we should support her dreams." Claire smiled and made a note on the application. This was their routine now. Marcus would cook breakfast while Claire reviewed applications for the foundation she now helped run. Emma Grace would provide commentary on everything from the pancake batter to the worthiness of scholarship candidates. "Mommy," Emma Grace said, licking chocolate off her fingers, "when are you and Marcus getting married?" Claire nearly choked on her coffee. "Emma Grace! What? You love each other, right? And Marcus loves me too. So when's the wedding?" Marcus flipped a pancake and tried to hide his smile. Emma Grace had been asking variations of this question for weeks, with the persistence only a 6-year-old could maintain. "Marriage is complicated, sweetheart," Claire said diplomatically. "No, it's not. You find someone you love who loves you back, and then you have a party with cake." "She's not wrong," Marcus said mildly, earning a glare from Claire. "Don't encourage her. I'm just saying, the kid has a point about the cake." Emma Grace giggled and reached for more chocolate chips. "Plus, if you get married, then Marcus can officially be my daddy, and I won't have to keep explaining to people why my daddy has a different last name." The comment was casual, but it hit both adults with unexpected force. Emma Grace had started calling Marcus Daddy about 2 months ago, and he'd never corrected her. Claire had talked to him about it privately, wanting to make sure he was comfortable with the title, and Marcus had told her honestly that hearing Emma Grace call him Daddy was the greatest honor of his life. "Actually," Marcus said, turning away from the stove to face both of them, "I have something I wanted to talk to you both about." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Claire's eyes widened, and Emma Grace let out a squeal of excitement. "Is that what I think it is?" Claire whispered. "Depends on what you think it is," Marcus said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Emma Grace, would you help me with something?" Emma Grace nodded eagerly, bouncing in her chair. Marcus knelt down beside her. "I love your mommy very much, and I love you very much too. I want us to be a real family forever, but I need to ask both of you something important." He opened the ring box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring alongside a smaller ring clearly meant for a child. "Claire," Marcus said, looking up at the woman who had changed his entire world, "will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the love you and Emma Grace have given me?" Claire's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "And Emma Grace," Marcus continued, turning to the little girl who had started this whole journey with a whispered wish to Santa. "Will you let me be your daddy officially? Will you wear this ring and be my daughter forever?" Emma Grace launched herself off her chair and into Marcus's arms. "Yes, yes, I want to be your daughter forever and ever." Marcus hugged her tight, then looked up at Claire, who was still crying. "Well?" he asked softly. "What do you say?" Claire wiped her eyes and smiled through her tears. "I say yes, to all of it, to forever." As Marcus slipped the ring onto Claire's finger and the smaller ring onto Emma Grace's, he thought about the Christmas morning when a 5-year-old girl had told Santa she didn't want toys. She wanted a daddy for her mommy. He thought about the loneliness that had driven him to put on a red suit, and the love that had convinced him to take it off for good. "You know," he told Emma Grace as she admired her new ring, "your Christmas wish really did come true." "I know," Emma Grace said matter-of-factly. "Santa magic is real. Sometimes it just takes a while to work." 1 year later, on Christmas morning, Marcus Harrison sat on the floor of their living room, watching his wife and daughter open presents. The tree was smaller than the one that had once graced his penthouse. The presents were fewer and less expensive, but the joy filling their modest home was richer than anything he'd ever experienced. Emma Grace held up a drawing she'd made in school, a picture of their family standing in front of their house with the words, "My Daddy," written in crayon beneath Marcus's stick figure. "This is my favorite present," Marcus said honestly. "Better than the new watch Mommy got you?" Emma Grace asked. "Much better." Claire curled up beside him on the couch, wearing the fuzzy Christmas pajamas Emma Grace had insisted they all wear. "Any regrets?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked around their living room, at the toys scattered across the floor, at Emma Grace's artwork covering the refrigerator, at the photos documenting their life together. He thought about his old penthouse, probably decorated by some impersonal interior designer for its new owner. He thought about the foundation that had already helped hundreds of families, about the work that filled his days with purpose. "Not a single one," he said, pulling both his girls closer. "This is the richest I've ever been." Outside, snow began to fall, and if you believed in Christmas magic, which everyone in the Harrison household did, you might have heard the distant sound of sleigh bells on the wind. Sometimes the best gifts aren't the ones you ask for. Sometimes they're the ones you never knew you needed, delivered by someone who's learning that the real magic of Christmas isn't in giving or receiving, but in becoming the person you were always meant to be. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a whispered wish to a mall Santa really can change everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in moments of genuine connection, please share it with someone who needs to believe in the magic of second chances. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages, delivered by people brave enough to choose love over fear, truth over comfort, and real connection over empty success. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we believe that everyone deserves their own Christmas miracle. Share this story, spread a little magic, and remember, sometimes the best way to find your own happiness is to help someone else find theirs. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love to transform everything it touches.